Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are reading from the Tales and Parables of Sri Ramakrishna. And it's an interesting collection because some of them you find in the Gospel and some of them you don't. So these were collected by all the people that used to visit Sri Ramakrishna and the parables that they would remember him telling. So you get a few extra little tidbits that you don't necessarily find in the other literature. So, but many of these will sound familiar. The first one we're going to do tonight, and we're going to skip around a bit, but this one is those worthless things.
Those worthless things. Body and wealth are impermanent. Why go to take so much trouble for their sakes? Just think of the plight of the Hatha yogis. Their attention is fixed on one ideal only: longevity. They do not aim at the realization of God at all. They practice such exercises as washing out the intestines, drinking milk through a tube, and the like, with that one aim in view. There was once a goldsmith whose tongue suddenly turned up and stuck to his palate. He looked like a man in samadhi. He became completely inert and remained so a long time. My people came to worship him. After several years, his tongue suddenly returned to its natural position, and he became conscious of things as before, so he went back to his work. Now, these are physical things, have nothing to do with God. There was a man who knew 82 postures, talked big about yoga samadhi, but inwardly he was drawn to women and gold. Once he found a banknote worth several thousand rupees. He could not resist the temptation and swallowed it, thinking he would get it out somehow later on. Oh, the note was got out of him all right, but he was sent to jail for 3 years.
So anyway, Sri Ramakrishna's point here is, of course, that the various things in Hatha Yoga are not necessarily leading you to the goal. They help some people. Doing the various postures can help to balance the body's energies and so forth. And oftentimes people that take yoga classes will start to get interested in, well, where did all this stuff come from? And so then they start getting interested in meditation. So there's always a good side to these things. But the danger is that people just sort of stop at the physical level and look to making themselves more healthy. Of course, the point of being healthy is so that you can actually do spiritual practices. That's the point. So you don't want to miss the point. That's the idea here. And so he didn't tend to emphasize these kinds of things, and most of the direct disciples also didn't emphasize doing a lot of yoga postures and so forth, but some of them did. Some of them would do it on their own. It's not like they banned it or anything or thought it was bad. It's not bad. It has a useful purpose. It's just that it tends to, for a lot of people, it tends to end up being the end of things and not the beginning. All right, so let's skip over to the first parable on Maya, which is on page 47 in the book, if you're following along.
Maya. Enmeshed in Maya, Brahman weeps. Vishnu incarnated himself as a sow in order to kill the demon Hiranyaksha. After killing the demon, the sow remained quite happy with her young ones. Forgetting her real nature, she was suckling them very contentedly. The gods in heaven could not persuade Vishnu to relinquish his sow's body and return to the celestial regions. He was absorbed in the happiness of his beast form. After consulting among themselves, the gods sent Shiva to the sow. And Shiva asked the sow, "Why have you forgotten yourself?" Vishnu replied to the sow's body, "Why, I'm quite happy here." Thereupon, with a stroke of his trident, Shiva destroyed the sow's body, and Vishnu went back to heaven. Everyone is under the authority of the Divine Mother, Mahamaya, the primal energy. Even the incarnations of God accept the help of Maya to fulfill their mission on earth. Therefore, they worship the primal energy.
There's another version here that adds a little bit to it, where first he kills all of the sow's children, and so that the sow is weeping and weeping, and then he rips open the body of the sow, and Vishnu pops back out and realizes what a fool he was to think that he was happy being a pig. This is our situation, and a lot of times people angrily ask, well, why is there so much evil in the world, and why am I having all these difficulties and so forth? Well, one of the answers is it's because that's when you tend to remember God the most and remember the impermanence of the world the most. If everything is hunky-dory and everything's going along happily, and you find all things very enjoyable, and you never have anything go wrong, and then you tend to forget God. You don't remember that this world is impermanent. You think that everything is just fine the way it is. But when difficulties come, we're reminded, oh yes, there's something higher that's supposed to be going on here. We're supposed to be searching for the absolute truth, not this relative existence that we find in the world. And so these are the things that tend to remind us. So in the more expanded version, you find that the sow had to endure the troubles of losing all its children in order to realize its plight and be able to come out of its pig body. All right, next one is, how is Maya?
A certain sadhu lived for some time in the room above the concert room of the temple of Dakshineshwar. He did not speak with anybody. He spent his whole time in the meditation of God. One day, all of a sudden, a cloud darkened the sky. Shortly afterwards, a high wind blew away the cloud. The holy man now came out of his room, and he began to laugh and dance in the veranda in front of the concert room. Upon this, I asked him, "How is it that you, who spend your days so quietly in your room, are dancing in joy and feel so jolly today?" The holy man replied, "Such is Maya that envelops the life. First, there's clear sky. Then all of a sudden, a cloud darkens it, and presently, everything is as before, once more."
So that's kind of the summary of our existence. We come from the absolute, and we become embodied, and we become the veil of Maya is drawn over our consciousness, and we see everything in the terms of the relative world, the pairs of opposites, and so forth. through the three gunas, and then when enlightenment dawns, the veil of Maya is removed, and it is as it was before, as it always was. Now, of course, Maya is such an inscrutable concept that there'll be several parables that try to get us the idea across. That's the purpose of parables, is that they try to explain things that are difficult to understand philosophically. And so, excuse me, we use various metaphors and examples and tales and so forth in order to illustrate the concept more thoroughly. So we have another one here. Such indeed is Maya.
Once Narada besought the Lord of the universe, Lord, show me that Maya of thine which can make the impossible possible. The Lord nodded assent. Subsequently, the Lord one day set out on a travel with Narada. After going some distance, he felt very thirsty and fatigued. So he sat down and told Narada, Narada, I feel very thirsty. Please get me a little water from somewhere. Narada at once ran in search of water. Finding no water nearby, he went far from the place and saw a river at a great distance. When he approached the river, he saw a most charming young lady sitting there. He was at once captivated by her beauty. As soon as Narada went near her, she began to address him in sweet words, and ere long, both fell in love with each other. Narada then married her and settled down as a householder. In the course of time, he had a number of children by her, and while he was thus living happily with his wife and children, there came a pestilence in the country. Death began to collect its toll from every place. Then Narada proposed to abandon the place and go somewhere else. His wife agreed, and they both came out of their house, leading their children by the hand. But no sooner did they come to the bridge to cross the river than there came a terrible flood. And in the rush of water, all their children were swept away, one after another. And at last, the wife too was drowned. Overwhelmed with grief at his bereavement, Narada sat down on the bank and began to weep. Just then the Lord appeared before him, saying, O Narada, where is the water? Why are you weeping? The sight of the Lord startled the sage. And then he understood everything. He explained, Lord, my obeisance to thee, and my obeisance also to thy wonderful Maya.
Yeah, so that illustrates the point that this whole relative existence that we're experiencing now, once you achieve enlightenment, you realize it's just like a dream, and it's the memory of it will pass by very quickly, and time is very different in these different realms. There's stories like that in the Yoga Vashishta Ramayana as well that talk about incidences where people experience a whole other lifetime within a few minutes, and then when they come out of that delusion, they realize that that was just a brief dream. And so this is the idea that this life is like a dream, just like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. And so remembering that, that's the nature of Maya. It also reminds us of a magic show, too. We get completely engrossed in the magic show, and the magician is able to create illusion after illusion of things that really don't make sense. Again, making the seemingly impossible seem like it's possible. But of course, it's just tricks. He's not actually creating rabbits out of thin air, and he's not actually cutting people in half and putting them back together again, and so forth. And that's the nature of Maya. Maya has created all of this to seem like it's all quite real, and it's a temporary reality, that's for sure, just like the magic show is actually going on in front of you, and he's actually doing tricks, but the way it seems is not what it really is. It's also kind of like going to a movie. You know, we can get completely engrossed in a movie and get completely wrapped up in it. And we can laugh and we can cry and we can become so identified with the characters. You might even start talking to each other about it and taking positions of the different characters. And eventually the movie's over and you have to go back to the rest of your life, and the memory of the movie fades. So this is another example that this world is kind of like a movie that's going on. It's the drama of the Divine Mother going on. But our real nature is something that transcends all of that. All right, let's go on to the next one. Maya vanishes the moment it is known.
A priest was once going to the village of a disciple of his. He had no servant with him. Seeing a cobbler on the way, he addressed him, saying, "Oh, hello, good man. Will you accompany me as a servant? You will be fed well and taken good care of it if you come with me." And the cobbler replied, "Oh, sir, I'm the lowest caste. How can I come as your servant?" The priest said, "Oh, never mind. Do not tell anybody what you are. Do not also speak to anyone or make anybody's acquaintance." The cobbler agreed. At twilight, while the priest was sitting at prayers in the house of his disciple, another Brahmana came and said to the priest's servant, "Go and bring my shoes from there." True to the behest of his master, he made no response. The Brahmana repeated his order a second time, but even then the servant remained silent. The Brahmana repeated it again and again. The cobbler did not move an inch. At last, getting annoyed, the Brahmana angrily said, "Sirrah, how dare you disobey a Brahmana's command? What's your name? Are you indeed a cobbler?" The cobbler, hearing this, began to tremble with fear. Looking piteously at the priest, said, "Oh, venerable sir, I'm found out. I dare not stay here any longer. Let me flee." So saying, he took to his heels. Just so, as Maya is recognized, she flies away.
Yeah, so as soon as you understand the true nature of this manifest universe as a manifestation of Maya, then you see through it. Now, unless you go into nirvikalpa samadhi for 21 days, you're going to come back into this world, but you'll see it completely differently. So it doesn't quite disappear for most of us, but we see things quite differently. You know, it occurred to me that one of the basic plots that is used in a lot of stories and films and so forth is misidentification of some sort, where somebody's identity is not known in the beginning and is eventually found out, or they're mistaken for somebody else or something like that. It's a common plot device. And I think it's appealing to us because of this nature of Maya, where things are not what they seem, and that we have been misidentified. We've misidentified ourselves as being a body and a mind. And at the end of our spiritual journey, when we've become enlightened, we find our true nature. And so just like in a good movie or a book, the plot unravels and eventually the true identity of the person is found out. And we've all enjoyed the movie. So we're here to enjoy this play for a while, but we don't want to enjoy it so much like the sow that we forget to get out of the movie and realize our true nature. All right, so the prolonged dream that we call life. So again, we're going to use the dream analogy here.
There was a farmer who lived in the countryside. He was a real jnani. He earned his living by farming. He was married. After many years, a son was born to him, whom he named Haru. The parents loved the boy dearly. This was natural, since he was the one precious gem of the family. On account of his religious nature, the farmer was loved by the villagers. And one day he was working in the field when a neighbor came and told him that Haru had an attack of cholera. Well, the farmer at once returned home and arranged for treatment for the boy. But Haru died. The other members of the family were grief-stricken. The farmer acted as if nothing had happened. He consoled his family and told them that grieving was futile. Then he went back to his field. On returning home, he found his wife weeping even more bitterly, and she said to him, "Oh, how heartless you are. You haven't shed one tear for the child." The farmer replied quietly, "Shall I tell you why I haven't wept? I had a very vivid dream last night. I dreamt I had become a king. I was the father of 8 sons. I was very happy with them. Then I woke up. Now I'm greatly perplexed. Should I weep for those 8 sons or for this one, Haru?" The farmer was a jnani. Therefore, he realized that the waking state is as unreal as the dream state. There's only one eternal substance, and that is this Atman.
Yeah, so this was a story that you do find in the gospel, I think. And it's told fairly often in some of our lectures as well. And of course, when you read the lives of Holy Mother and Vivekananda and some of the direct disciples, you find that they very frequently grieve over the loss of a loved one and become very upset. But they don't let it ruin the rest of their life. They manage to get back on track quite quickly because they do realize that this is the nature of things. Things are not permanent in this world. They're not fooled a bit by that. But it's part of the drama. We're still having to deal with the day-to-day drama, and it's upsetting in the day-to-day drama that some loved one leaves us. But when we realize that it's just part of the whole drama, then we can realize that we don't need to grieve the rest of our lives over it. We don't need to ruin the rest of our lives over it, which happens sometimes. You find some people simply can't adjust to the fact that some loved one has passed away, and they end up grieving for the rest of their life, or sometimes the grief is so strong that they themselves die fairly soon afterwards. But in other cases, you find that people go through the natural grieving process, but then they just continue and they go on with their life. They find new meaning in their life and continue on from that. And so this is the example of the great ones that we need to follow, is that it's certainly okay to feel grief and to sympathize with others that are feeling grief, but we don't need it to last for a long, long time. We can go on, pick things up and go on. All right. Just have a couple more here on Maya. And so the next one is, it's nothing, it's nothing.
It is not easy to get rid of illusion. It lingers even after the attainment of knowledge. A man dreamt of a tiger. Then he woke up, and his dream vanished, but his heart continued to palpitate. Some thieves came to a field. The straw figure resembling a man had been put there to frighten intruders. The thieves were scared by the figure and could not persuade themselves to enter the field. One of them, however, approached and found why it was only a figure made of straw. He came back to his companions and said, "Well, there's nothing to be afraid of." But still, they refused to go. They said that their hearts were beating fast. Then the daring thief laid the figure on the ground and said, "It is nothing, it is nothing." And this is the process of neti neti.
Not this, not this. So it's the idea of the jnani to continually remind ourselves that the things in the world are simply temporary. It doesn't mean they're completely unreal. It just means that they're only a temporary manifestation, and that it's eventually all of it's going to pass away. We really all need to remember that. We get so caught up on things sometimes. We want to create things of a permanent nature. Well, nothing's permanent, so you can give that idea up. But it still doesn't mean we just trash the earth and do whatever we want with it. We want to take care of it while we're here. And so, while things aren't going to last forever, the sun's going to swell up into a big red giant and incinerate the inner planets and so forth. But that's going to happen a long time from now. And the drama has a long time to go. So just because a theater's run, the run of some movie or play or an opera or something is only going to go for the next 20 days, doesn't mean you burn the theater down. The theater's going to go on. There's going to be more dramas later. So we continue to play through the various dramas, but remembering that it's all temporary, and this is not permanent and this is not permanent. And so we don't get too attached to it, but we don't trash it either, just because it's not real. All right, if all is really unreal.
Rama and Lakshmana wanted to go to Ceylon. The ocean was before them. Lakshmana was angry. Taking his bow and arrow, he said, "I shall kill Varuna. This ocean prevents our going to Ceylon." Rama explained the matter to him, saying, "Lakshmana, all that you are seeing is unreal, like a dream. The ocean is unreal, and your anger is also unreal. It is equally unreal to think of destroying one unreal thing by means of another."
Yeah, of course, Varuna is the deity of the ocean, and so Lakshmana's anger, he wanted to take his anger out on the ocean deity himself, but Rama's reminding him that it's all kind of unreal. But of course, that didn't mean they just went home and gave everything up. They found a way to get across the ocean. Of course, Hanuman, through his faith, leaped across the ocean, and they eventually built a bridge across the strait so that they could get to Lanka and eventually conquer Ravana. And of course, it's a great metaphorical drama that unfolds in the Ramayana that reminds us of the nature of the universe. And I think we talked about this a few classes ago, where it represents the reuniting of the masculine and feminine elements, the absolute principle and the manifested principle. And they're both divine, and we need to keep them both in mind. We can't just take one or the other. Now, in some spiritual practices, you might focus on one or the other, but once your realization comes, you'll realize that they are really one, that this universe is a manifestation of the divine, even though it's temporary and not real in the ultimate sense, but it's still a manifestation of the divine. And so we realize that the all-pervading nature of Brahman, it's pervading all that we see, even though we're misinterpreting it. So this is the strange nature of Maya. That's why Shankara said you can't really say that Maya is unreal, even though this started out with that sentence, if all is really unreal. You can't really say that Maya is unreal. It's simply a temporary reality, and we're not seeing its true nature. Just like the physicist and chemist can tell you that we see material objects all around us in this universe, and we really don't understand that the atoms are made up of mostly empty space. That makes no sense to us at all. I can't put my hand through this desk. If my hand is mostly empty space and the desk is mostly empty space, why can't I just put my hand all the way through it? Well, it doesn't work that way in this realm of Maya. You end up with the electron fields, clouds of electrons of the atoms in the hand and the desk, and don't like each other, and they repel each other, and so you can't pound your fist through the desk. And so clearly we're not seeing things the way even the chemists and physicists are telling us that things are. They will tell you that the atom is mostly empty space, that the electrons are very tiny little negative electrical charges whirling around in some fashion around the nucleus, but you can't really tell where. And so this whole realm is this very strange creation. The more you study the quantum nature of reality, the stranger you realize that the nature of this universe is. And that's this peculiar nature of Maya showing through even in our sciences, where you can't really pin things down anymore. You can't really say what the nature of this reality is and how it's all working. But as a practical matter, we can figure out a lot of things about it and discover all sorts of ways of manipulating it. And so we have sort of a working reality of the nature of Maya, of things in Maya, but ultimately it has a very different nature. All right, well, we managed to get through all of the ones on Maya, and we can do a couple on pitfalls. Let's read the first one on the pitfalls of spiritual life.
The Siddha stops the storm. Once a great Siddha was sitting on the seashore when there came a great storm. He, being greatly distressed by it, exclaimed, "Let the storm cease." And his words were fulfilled. Just then a ship was going at a distance with all sails set, and as the wind suddenly died away, it capsized, drowning all who were on board this ship. Now the sin of causing the death of so many persons accrued to the Siddha, and for this reason he lost all his occult powers and had to suffer in purgatory.
There's lots of stories like that where people get some wishes from a genie, or they get some sort of power to do special things, and they don't realize the consequences that things have, that you can't just have one thing change in the world without it cascading and affecting all sorts of things down the line. So this is a common thing. And now, of course, many years ago, when was it? Was it the 70s or so? All sorts of sitcoms developed around some of these themes. You had I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and so forth. And they would frequently end up with all sorts of strange difficulties because of the magic that would go on in these various sitcoms. And that was the fun of them, the difficulties that they would get themselves into. So the idea is that you really don't want to yearn to get these cities and become a siddha, trying to control things in the universe, because you're apt to mess things up in ways you had no idea. And so you get this kind of scenario also in some of these time travel stories where they assume that they can do time travel and they go back, and then somehow they mess things up in the future because they've changed something and they didn't realize the changes they were going to make would have such consequences. That was the idea of the original, the butterfly effect, where the story is that they had the ability to go back in time and they could hunt dinosaurs, and so they were going to only hunt the dinosaurs that were already just about to die anyway, so it wasn't going to make any difference, you see. And so they would go out and have fun hunting dinosaurs back in time and then come back inside. And but unfortunately, one person inadvertently stepped off the path and crushed a little butterfly. And they'd hoped that that wasn't going to change things, but when they got back to their own time frame, they found that the whole world was completely different from what had been when they left before, just because of that one little butterfly that had been smashed inadvertently when they went back in time. So it's the same kind of idea, that you don't really understand all the consequences that various things have in the world. Everything is sort of hinged on everything else. But one thing you can do that's very positive is to sit and meditate and feel good vibrations going out to the whole world. That was one of the things Vivekananda recommended, that you can sit and think of peace going out into the universe. May all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, and so forth. And that's a nice way to start your meditation. Somebody one time said that they had trouble reconciling religion with social activism and being able to help things in the world. And I suggested, well, you can help things in the world simply by creating good vibrations when you're sitting and meditating and praying. That's a way of helping the world in a very positive way. You don't have to be the typical activist. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We need people that are actively trying to help things in the world. But you don't, if that's not your nature, you can also be of help to the world simply by meditating and thinking good thoughts. You can do, they've done experiments with doing that kind of thing. The Transcendental Meditation people were very good at doing experiments with their Transcendental Meditation technique, and they discovered that if a certain percentage of the people in certain cities would focus their meditation on creating a more peaceful environment in that particular city, that they found that the crime rate actually went down. And so this is an example of a very positive effect of people pursuing spiritual life. You don't have to feel guilty that you're not going out with a picket sign and trying to change something in the world. If that's your nature, that's fine. But if it's not, your meditation is doing good to the whole world. So I think we have time for one more, and then we will sign off for tonight. So let's read about occult powers are more a hindrance than a help to God vision.
Once upon a time, a sadhu acquired great occult powers. He was vain about them, but he was a good man and had some austerities to his credit. One day the Lord, disguised as a holy man, came to him and said, "O revered sir, I've heard that you have great occult powers." The sadhu received the Lord cordially and offered him a seat. Just then an elephant passed by. The Lord, in the disguise of the holy man, said to the sadhu, "Revered sir, can you kill this elephant if you like?" The sadhu said, "Oh yes, it is possible." So saying, he took a pinch of dust, muttered some mantras, threw it at the elephant. The beast struggled a while in pain, and then dropped dead. The Lord said, "What power you have! You've killed the elephant." The sadhu laughed, and again the Lord spoke. "Now, can you revive the elephant?" "Oh, that too is possible," replied the sadhu, and he threw another pinch of charmed dust at the beast, and the elephant writhed about a little and came back to life. Then the Lord said, "Wonderful is your power. But may I ask you one thing? You've killed the elephant, and you've revived it. But what has that done for you? Do you feel uplifted by it? Has it enabled you to realize God?" In saying this, the Lord vanished. Subtle are the ways of Dharma. One cannot realize God if one has even the least trace of desire. The thread cannot pass through the eye of a needle if it has the smallest fiber sticking out.
Anybody that's tried to thread a needle knows that problem. You wet it and it dries before you can get it through the tiny little hole. But of course, not just desire, a trace of desire, but it's the ego that's really illustrated here, is the way I see it, is this sadhu with these powers was very proud of his powers, and he loved demonstrating them, and so he's gotten these powers so that he can do these tricks for people and have everybody come admire him, and oh, how wonderful this is that you can do all these interesting tricks, you see. But what all that's doing is really increasing his ego, and as Sri Ramakrishna said, the ego is the biggest obstacle to spiritual realization, because it's the ego that creates our separateness from everything else. The ego, John Dobson used to say that the ego is a genetic invention that allows us to survive as an organism. And it's passed down very nicely from generation to generation, and we're all descended from people that managed to survive. So we have a built-in tendency to have this ego that tries to figure out in this world what's good for it and what's bad for it. How am I going to survive here? And the ego tells you, well, this is good for you and this is not good for you. And the ego says, well, you need more of this and you don't need that, and you want to get rid of this and you want to build up more of that. It's good to have people admire you, and it's good to have all these achievements, and it's good to have a lot of money, and so that you can have a safe place to live and plenty of good food and so forth and so on. And so the ego is directing all of this, and so it separates you from everybody else. You stop thinking about the good of other people. Stop thinking about the good of Mother Earth. All of your thinking is geared towards, how do I survive in this realm? And so thinking, you're not going towards oneness. You're not going towards the undividedness. You're not going towards feeling the infinitude of your real nature. And so you've gone further and further away from realization rather than closer and closer. Remember, we need to try to find ways of reducing the ego so that we get closer to realizing our true, infinite, undivided, and unchanging nature. So we can continue next time with some more of these interesting parables of Sri Ramakrishna that help us to understand some of these more inscrutable aspects of philosophy. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace.